Kathy Ireland, who is an American model and entrepreneur, has been quoted as saying, "We expanded the brand to include a whole line of apparel and accessories, but we quickly learned that it was not good to have one channel of distribution." So what Kathy Ireland is trying to stress is that it's very important to have more than one way of getting your product out to your customer, and understanding different ways that that objective can be met is super critical. So in this chapter, we're going to be looking at distribution and pricing, which is having the right product mix, finding the right person in the right place at the right price. So in distribution, I will be defining what it is and how different channels of distribution are differentiated. I'll be describing the various types of wholesale distributors. We'll take a look through or at different strategies and trends in store and non-store retailing. I'll explain the key factors in physical distribution. I will outline core pricing objectives and strategies, and finally discuss pricing in practice, including the role of consumer perceptions. So distribution, in a nutshell, is how you get a product out to the consumer. And more generally, it can refer to how you spread the message about your company. And it's actually probably the single topic in a new business person's learning that people really understand the least. So you can have a totally awesome product, but unless you are able to get it into the consumer's hands, then your awesome product will fall by the wayside like so many others. So when we're looking at our distribution strategy, we have to be considering the channel of distribution, which is the network of organizations and processes that link producers to consumers. And furthermore, we have to also consider the physical distribution of the product, and that is the actual movement of the product along the path between manufacturer and the final customer. Now, in the direct channel, the producer and customer are not separated by anyone in between. There's no intermediaries. An example of direct channel is the Portland State University Farmers Market, which meets every Saturday, and consumers can go to the farmers market there at Portland State and buy produce directly from the farm. There's no store in between the farmer and the customer. Another example of distribution is called channel intermediaries. And this is when we're looking at moving products from production to the consumer, how can we best move that product from the plant that's in Ohio to the consumer that is in Gresham, Oregon? How can we do that in a way that is effective and efficient? So these are all strategies that are very important when you're marketing your product. Now, this is a very messy chart, but it's designed when you look at the top part, how many different ways that you can have, on the top you've got your manufacturers, and the manufacturer can sell to every customer directly. But that can also be very expensive. So for a lot of manufacturers, what they do is they have an intermediary, typically some type of a warehouse. And through that warehouse, the manufacturer is shipping to one location, and then the warehouse is sending the products out to the end customer. A marketing intermediary is typically a wholesaler. So in the grocery industry, for example, we have Unified Grocers, which is located in Milwaukee, and they will purchase products from Quaker Oats, from Golden Grain, from Swiss Miss, from Butterball, and they will then purchase those products, keep them in the warehouse, and as independent stores such as Thriftway or New Seasons are purchasing products, they will purchase those products directly from the warehouse rather than from the company that made them. So we have retailers and we have wholesalers. So retailers are people that sell products directly to the ultimate user, and typically those sales are done in small quantities, such as a store. When you walk into Fred Meyer, you're buying a loaf of bread, you're buying a can of beans. Now, wholesalers buy products from producers and sell them to other businesses or non-final users. So Unified is an example of that. Wholesalers they really play a role in helping to distribute products in a much quicker and cheaper fashion than a lot of times retailers can. So, it's a very important channel. And, on occasion, there are some distributors that can be both retailer and wholesaler. So Verizon is an example where they have their own stores where you can go and buy a Verizon phone, or you can also go to Best Buy or Costco and purchase the phone there. So we have a couple of different types of wholesale distributors. Basically, a distributor will buy products from a range of different businesses and sell them to a wide variety of customers. When you have a merchant wholesaler, they take possession of the product and or they own the product that they then distribute. Now, agents and brokers, they will help to facilitate the movement of goods, but they do not actually take title of the product that they distribute. So that is a big distinction between a wholesaler and an agent or broker. So it's a couple of types of wholesalers. We have full service merchant wholesalers that provide warehousing, which means they hold the product, they will ship the product, they will help you promote it, they will repair your product. A lot of times there's credit that is given. And for wholesalers that have only partial service, they tend to be drop shipper. So a drop shipper is where a company makes a one-time delivery. You have cash and carry wholesalers that you can go in and purchase some products, but not as many as a regular wholesaler. And then you have truck jobbers, and these wholesalers, they deal with goods that are perishable, like bread, and they take these products directly to their customers, and they also have a small store. So a lot of the bread places have outlets, but the bread companies will deliver to the stores and stock the shelves. Pepsi and a lot of the soda pop companies and alcohol distributors, they will also act in the same way. Now, this slide shows that there's a number of retail store categories, and each category has its own function, and it's served, they serve a unique role within the market. So we have the category killer. So this is a store that is large, like an Office Max, like Toys R Us, like Best Buy. So they have a huge variety of products within their product range, but they tend to be in one to five categories. So Office Max, you can buy obviously office products, you can buy computer equipment, you can buy office equipment, you can do copying. Those are all business related. You're not going to really find toys at Office Max. That is not the purpose of their business. So they're very defined in who they're, the niche that they're trying to serve. You have convenience stores such as 7-Eleven and Plaid Pantry, and they just carry a small a small range of products, and they're usually open 24 hours, and it's just when you need to make a quick purchase. You have department stores such as Nordstrom's or Macy's, and they offer a large variety of merchandise. They also have a high level of service. You have your discount stores that also offer a wide array of merchandise at significantly cheaper prices than a department store. But there's also less service. So examples of these retailers are Targets, Walmarts, Kmarts. You have outlets where you have producer-owned stores selling directly to the public at what they say is a big discount. We have the outlet mall in Troutdale, and there you can buy Nike products that might be discontinued or slightly flawed. You will find Calvin Klein, you will find Carter's. There's all sorts of stores that you will find in the outlets. There are specialty stores that sell a wide selection of merchandise within a narrow category, such as Barnes & Noble. You have Claire's, Bath & Body Works. Those are examples of specialty stores. There's supermarkets that offer food, such as Safeway, Albertsons, Trader Joe's. You have supercenters that sell not only food, but general merchandise, such as Walmart supercenters or super Targets. And then you have your warehouse clubs that sell discounted food and general merchandise to members in a warehouse format. So Costco's are a great example of those. These are all examples of retail store categories, and it's important to understand when you're developing your product, where will your product be positioned? So when we're looking at retailers and their strategies and trends, we have multi-channel retailing, which provides multiple distribution channels for consumers to buy a product. We have intensive distribution that makes the most sense for low-cost convenience goods that consumers won't travel too far behind. We have selective distribution, which tends to work best for medium and higher price products or stores that consumers, they don't expect to find them on every street corner. You have exclusive distribution that tends to work for luxury good providers with a customer base that actively seeks their products. And then you have the wheel of retailing, which this suggests that it's retail firms and retail categories that become more upscale as they go through their life cycles. So you have Clark's shoes, for example, that as Clark's used to be only sold in upscale stores such as Nordstrom's, but they're now becoming even more refined, and you're finding Clark's stores in malls like Clackamas Town Center. And you're also seeing them in the Troutdale outlets. So this is, started off as a high quality product, and it's now become even more upscale as it has been around a little longer. Now, we also have non-store retailing. And this has been really interesting because it's a growing segment in the business world. So we have online retailing, which is customers or retailers such as Amazon that don't have a store, but consumers will actively shop and purchase their products through the online venue. With direct response retailing, we have some examples of what that looks like are catalogs, telemarketing, and there's advertising that is meant to elicit direct consumer responses. So you'll see ads sometimes on TV for LL Bean or Land's End, but you don't see a Land's End store. That's all done through direct response retailing. You have direct selling, and that includes all methods of selling directly to customers in their homes or in their workplaces. So this has become probably a smaller way to reach customers because it's very intensive. But when you have people that are knocking on your door trying to sell to you directly, that is an example of direct selling. And then we have vending, which is using vending machines. And this has become definitely more upscale as marketers recognize the value of having their products as conveniently placed as possible to their target consumers. And I actually saw in the news last night that there is a guy that's working on making salads available in vending machines. And he's really working to refine the product so that consumers can buy a salad versus a cookie or chips at a reasonable price, and it's far more convenient. So this is, an interesting category that does have lots of opportunity. Now, the first half of the distribution strategy is to determine what is your best channel that you want to use. So the channel is considered your supply chain, and that is all organizations, processes, and activities involved in the flow of goods from raw materials to the final consumer. So you want to have the best channel available to you. And when we're looking at supply chain management, and this is really the second half of this process, so it's understanding and planning and coordinating the movement of the product through this system. And a lot of time and attention is paid in the logistics of the supply chain management. So exactly how are you moving products efficiently from point A to point B so that you're keeping costs low and yet being timely in delivering your product? So there's a lot involved in the logistics. So some key parts of the elements of supply chain: you have your raw materials, you've got your logistics, the transportation aspect, you have your warehouse and storage, you have the production, how do you actually make the product, you have warehouse storage, again, after the product is made. You have the logistics of once your product's made, how do you move it closer to the consumer? Will it be in a warehouse or will it be sold directly to consumers? And then finally, you have your distributors and using your marketing team and your sales team to get the product out there. So, factors to consider when you're making decisions about supply chain: what types of warehousing do you need? What types of materials will you need to have there? How about your inventory control? You don't want to have too much on hand, but you also don't want to run out of stock. You want to be thinking about your customer service, your transportation. Is your product secure so that it can't be tampered with or stolen? So Walmart is a really interesting, they have a fascinating system where they actually manage their vendors. So when they are purchasing product from Kellogg's, when a case of product is removed from the Walmart warehouse, Kellogg's is linked up with Walmart's warehouse, and they know that they've sold a case of cornflakes, and that will start to signal to them to build an order for replenishment. And Walmart uses this system quite effectively. It helps them to maintain adequate levels of inventory without tying up financial resources and holding inventory that they haven't sold yet. So it's an amazing system that they use, and a lot of retailers in the country have started to model themselves after this particular warehousing style. So how do we get the product from the production to the consumer? Well, we have different means of transportation, and I think you all have seen these. So you have trains. It's amazing the amount of train traffic that we have in the Columbia River Gorge. It doesn't, it's medium in terms of its pricing. It's kind of slow, but it's very dependable. However, you don't get your shipments very often. So while you can get it, it's available. That is not used. If you use train or rail, you're not going to be getting a delivery every single day. You have trucks, which are very expensive, but they're fast. They're very dependable. There's a reasonable amount of flexibility, and you can get those shipments every single day. And trucks are probably used more than, in terms of actual deliveries, more than any other shipping mode. You have actual ships, cargo ships. We see barges going up and down the Columbia River Gorge. So it's pretty cheap, but it's very, very slow because you are so dependent on the weather and tides. On-time dependability is very low. There's not usually a lot of flexibility, and you don't get a lot of shipments because you can only bring in so many cargo ships into the port. You have planes, which are very, very expensive, but it's the fastest way to move products across the country. There's reasonable on-time dependability. There's not a lot of flexibility. You're either on the plane or you aren't. And you can also this can limit the frequency of your shipments, but it's pretty available. And then you have pipelines that is used primarily for natural resources. So once the pipeline is set up, it's pretty inexpensive, but it's a slow way to move products. But once it's turned on, you have excellent access to your product. For example, when the Alaska pipeline was built for delivery of oil, you know exactly when those deliveries are coming. Highly, highly dependable. And as far as availability, they're very limited. There's usually a lot of controversy surrounding them, usually around the environment. So these are all modes of transportation and ways that you can think about getting your product out there. So pricing. Price directly affects, spending choices at the entry level, and it really influences a company's profitability and their demand for the product. And it is probably one of the most difficult variable for marketers to control. You don't have any control over the cost of your raw goods, and you can control how much you're charging, but you have to find that decent balance between your supply and your demand, so that equilibrium price is coming up again. Now, when we're looking at boosting volume, we have a way to increase sales called penetration pricing. And that is done through very, very low pricing of new products. It reduces the risk to the consumers to try those new products. So it's a great way to get attention, and it's also a super way to market your product. Then you have everyday low pricing, which is long-term discount pricing, and this is used to achieve profitability through high sales volume. And you'll see that at Fred Meyer, for example, where they talk about having low prices every day. There's high-low pricing, so you'll have special sales on a limited number of products and higher everyday prices on others. You will see Macy's will use this strategy where they'll get your attention on some super great prices on, let's say, jeans, and then they'll market a nice sweater that's maybe not a high quality sweater, so you'll spend more money on that. Then we have loss leader pricing, which is where some items are advertised below cost and it's used to drive traffic into your stores. We see that with turkeys during the holiday season. A lot of times retailers will they'll lose money on turkeys trying to get the consumer in their doors. We will occasionally see competition that will match the price of other stores or retailers. And you also have, you can use pricing to create prestige. So you've got, when you're doing that, you have a practice that's called skimming pricing, and that's maximizing profitability by offering new products at a premium price. So you're making that product desirable. iPhones are a great example of this, where you've got a new product and everybody wants a new iPhone, and Apple will charge a premium price for that product, and the price will come down later on. but they have maximized their profitability. Now, pricing in practice, we have break-even analysis. So this is where you determine the number of units a firm has to sell in order to cover all costs. So you're not, with break-even, you're not losing money, but you're not making money. You're just breaking even. And that's a good place to start initially. Although long-term, you need to be making, definitely making profit. And then you have, your margin pricing. So your profit margin is the gap between the cost of the item and how much it is sold on a per product basis. And different categories or different products have different margin requirements. When you are looking at a retail store, department store, they're usually operating on profit margins of around 50%, whereas a grocery store will be at a much smaller profit margin. And when we're looking at how to determine the cost of the product, we do that through cost-based pricing. So how much does it actually cost? Does the product cost, and then determining the margin that we want to earn. And then demand-based pricing. So demand is where consumers want your product, so you can, because you have high demand, you can charge more. So Apple or iPhones are an example of that. So when we're looking at pricing, we have classic economics plus common sense. And this tells us that as consumers, we're probably going to be researching and weighing our options before we make the choice that we consider the best for us. In reality, consumers are not always rational. Our emotions can trump our minds, and there's some recent research that shows that money can act like a drug on our brains. And when we see things that say, oh, free, 99 cents, limited time, that lures us into purchasing products that we probably might not any other time. So while this is great news for marketers, for consumers, it can be challenging. And, when you're also considering the emotional factor of setting prices, it can be hard, because from a marketing standpoint, when you have consumers that are irrational and making a decision based on feelings is completely irrational, that can be very difficult. So, exposing a consumer to a high price initially can make a lower price seem reasonable, even if that lower price isn't. So a lot of times what smart marketers will do is they'll keep an overpriced item in their product line simply to promote the sales of other items. For example, if the most expensive necklace in a jewelry store is $100 and no one wants to buy it, well, the owner might add a necklace that's $200 to boost sales of the $100 necklace. So economists call this effect anchoring. And research shows that anchors, they're tough to shake. One key takeaway that goes beyond consumer goods is be the first to name a price in a negotiation, and don't worry about being overly reasonable. So these are some things to think about when you are setting your prices. So some key considerations when we are looking at price and quality. A lot of times price is viewed as an indicator of quality. And that might be true, it might not be true, but there are certainly times where consumers do perceive that paying more for a product means that it's better. And then we have the odd number pricing, and this is where we end prices in numbers below even dollars and cents in order to create the perception of greater value. So that is selling a product for $1.99 rather than $2, or selling a product at 2 for $7. So these are all some examples of trying to create that perception of value. And marketers have to really weigh the pros and cons of odd pricing. So these are highly valuable tools, and all must be considered as you are creating your product. So looking back, I've defined distribution and differentiated between channels of distribution and physical distribution. I've described the various types of wholesale distributors and discussed strategies and trends in store and non-store retailing. I've also explained some of the key factors in physical distribution, while also outlining core pricing objectives and strategies. And finally, I've ended by doing a very limited discussion on pricing and practice, and including the role of consumer perceptions. So this concludes chapter 13, and I would encourage you all to get into Buzz to see the assignments, and if you have any questions, please feel free to give me a call, and I wish you a fantastic week. Thank you.